Total Sports Zone. All sports, all action, one zone.
All right, we need to talk about something that just sent shockwaves through the entire NFL. How in the world did Bill Belichick, probably the greatest coach we've ever seen, get denied a spot in the Hall of Fame on his very first try?
I mean, really, how does that even happen? We're talking about a guy whose resume is basically the definition of football greatness. Yet, he got locked out of Canton. So what really went down? Let's get into it. So this whole thing kicks off with a vote. A vote that, honestly, everyone thought was just going to be a rubber stamp. Instead, it turned into an absolute firestorm. And there you have it, the cold, hard math. He needed 40 votes to get in, that's 80%, and he came up short. When he got the news, sources say he was just completely baffled and, understandably, really disappointed.
That was his reported question to someone close to him. And you know what? That's the same question everybody started asking. It just perfectly sums up the absolute confusion around this. 6 rings, and it's not enough? It just doesn't compute.
Okay, to really understand why this is so shocking, let's just quickly run through the case for Belichick. And to be honest, calling it overwhelming is kind of an understatement. Let's start with the only number that should matter: 6. 6 Super Bowl trophies as a head coach. That's not just a lot, it's more than any other head coach in the history of the game. A number like that isn't just supposed to be a nice line on your resume, it's supposed to be your express ticket straight to the Hall of Fame. And it's not just the rings, right? It's the sheer number of wins, 333 of them when you include the playoffs. That puts him in super exclusive company, second all time, right behind the legendary Don Shula. We're talking about the absolute peak of coaching for decades. And this right here, this shows the whole dynasty he built from the ground up. It was so much more than just those Super Bowls. It was 2 straight decades of just complete and utter dominance. 9 conference championships, 17 division titles. Oh, and by the way, that's not even counting the 2 rings he'd already won as the defensive genius for the Giants. You'd think the resume was bulletproof. Turns out, it wasn't. So if the resume is rock solid, we have to start looking for answers somewhere else. And that leads us to the shadows that have kind of followed Belichick for his entire career, the controversies.
Well, according to the reporting, Belichick himself believes it was pure politics that kept him out. And when you look at some of the anonymous comments coming from the voters, it's pretty clear his controversial past was a huge part of the debate in that room. And you know where this is going? It always comes down to 2 infamous words: Spygate and Deflategate. You had the illegal taping of signals with Spygate, and then the whole mess about underinflated footballs with Deflategate. For a pretty important group of voters, these scandals apparently cast what they called a dark shadow that just hung over everything the Patriots accomplished. And this quote from one of the voters, it just cuts right to the chase. It wasn't about the wins. It wasn't about the losses. For a key number of people on that committee, it was all about the perception of how those wins happened. The message is pretty clear. For some of them, the cheating stuff, as they put it, was the deal breaker. But it wasn't just old scandals. It was also about the politics happening inside that voting room. Because this wasn't some clean, simple process. Allegations of some serious backroom dealings started flying almost immediately. So real quick, here's how this all works. You've got this 50-person committee. The finalists are all bunched together, so they're kind of competing against each other for a limited number of spots. And here's the most important part. You need that supermajority of 40 votes, that 80%, to get in. That number is so high, and it means that a small but very motivated group of no votes can stop an induction dead in its tracks. And this is where things get personal. An absolutely explosive claim came out that Bill Polian, a Hall of Fame GM himself and a longtime rival of Belichick's, was actually lobbying people in the room, arguing that they should make Belichick wait a year as some sort of punishment. So how did Polian respond? Well, he came out swinging. He flatly denied it, calling the story totally and categorically untrue, and even went on the record saying he actually voted for Belichick. So now we're left with this classic he said situation, and we'll probably never know what really happened behind those closed doors. And as if all that drama wasn't enough, there's one last, pretty ironic twist to all of this. Because of the way the vote is structured, Belichick was actually in direct competition for those precious votes with the guy who's signed his checks for over 20 years, Patriots owner Robert Kraft. So the decision is made, the news breaks, and the reaction from the football world was immediate. And boy, was it loud.
I mean, it was just total disbelief across the board. Former players, people in the media, even the biggest superstars playing in the league right now. Everybody was weighing in, just trying to make sense of it.
But maybe no reaction captured the mood better than this one-word tweet from Patrick Mahomes, a guy who had some legendary showdowns with Belichick's teams. Insane. When the current face of the league, one of his fiercest competitors, can't even begin to understand the decision, you know just how crazy this whole thing was.
Look, let's be real. Bill Belichick is going to get into the Hall of Fame. It's going to happen eventually. But this stunning rejection on his first try, it makes us ask a much more complicated question about his legacy. For a guy who was defined completely and totally by winning, what does it mean that the first time he went up for the sport's highest honor, he lost?